Welcome back to the Enchanted Booklands. My name is Renee, and happy Mother's Day. I hope you all enjoy a happy Mother's Day with your mothers, or if you're a mother, with your children. We all appreciate everything that you guys do for us as children, and if you're a mother, you work really hard and you sacrifice a lot, so you deserve this day to be pampered. Today I'm going to be doing how I evolved as a reader tag. I was tagged by Stevie Reads, and I will be tagging a couple of booktubers. I'm probably going to pick some people that are newer. I don't know who I'm going to pick yet. I'll probably make that decision after I finish the video. But if I tagged you, it means I like your videos and I hope you continue. And I hope you do this tag because I'm interested to see you do it. So the first, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 4 questions I'm supposed to answer. So the first question is how... I have my iPad here. I'm going to be reading the questions off of it. So if you see me glance down, that's what's going on. I'm going to try not to glance down, but I have short-term memory loss. As soon as I look away, I forget what the question is. So I'm going to do this as best I can. So the first question is, how has your taste in books evolved? So when I first started reading, I was a kid. So I have talked in previous videos about the first books I really liked, and they were Nancy Drew books. So I talked about a book that I actually first read whenever I started reading and what got me into Nancy Drew. So today I'm going to just kind of talk about one of my favorite Nancy Drew books, and that is The Sign of the Twisted Candles. We have an orphan in here, finding basically a family to take care of them, and there's a lot of drama because a bunch of rich people as usual. I really enjoyed this book. It was one of the first Nancy Drew books I read after the first one, obviously, and I don't know really why I like this one so much. I think as a child you pick weird reasons for liking books and mine was to do with this candle. I don't know why, but I just liked it. It looks cool, and the story is really good too, so I really enjoyed that. And from Nancy Drew, I moved into, I read Nancy Drew a lot until I was older. I didn't really diverge from Nancy Drew books or mystery books, because when I kind of ran out of Nancy Drew books at the school library, I would go and buy them, or my mom would buy them for me, and that's why I have a pretty large collection of them. Not all of them, but pretty good collection. But from there, whenever eventually ran out, or when I went to junior high, they didn't have the yellow ones, so the classic ones, but they did have the Files series, so I started reading those. And then when I ran out of those, I started reading just regular mysteries by other authors. Mystery is one of those loves, that you always kind of have a love for, because mysteries are great, keeps you hanging on your seat. But as I moved into high school, they didn't really have Nancy Drew books in the school library anymore. So the only time I really read them is if my mom bought them for me or something along those lines. So I did 2 things after that. I started reading romance books. So one of the authors I found in high school that I really liked was Sarah Dessen. So this is Just Listen. This was probably one of the earlier books that I read by her, and I really enjoyed. I really do the Sarah Dessen reread. I've bought pretty much all of her books, I think, now as an adult. But there's a few that she's come out with, 2 or 3 books that I haven't even read, and I really need to get on with that. But my tastes have evolved. So they have evolved from just simple YA romance, obviously, and then after I kind of got through all of these and other like books like Marion Johnson, and like Meg Cabot. Meg Cabot's one of my favorite authors as well. I moved into fantasy romance, kind of. It's probably where it started. I was obsessed with vampires after reading Twilight. I think I didn't read her until I was like a junior in high school. And it had been out for at least like 2 or 3 years, because by the time I read it, Eclipse was out, I think. So it had been out for a couple years, or 3 at least, whenever I finally started reading Twilight. And after that, I just kind of latched on to anything that had a vampire in it. So vampires from one of those old loves I have, but I probably burned myself out on, because now that vampires are kind of coming back in, I've been procrastinating on reading them. But I can reread Twilight, no problem. Like, I don't know. But after that, I graduated high school and college. I kind of slowed down on reading. And now I was working. I got into audiobooks while I was working. I started out with Graceling, which kind of got me into like the fantasy with the side of romance. So I really enjoyed those kind of books. And then I fell out of reading again. But then eventually I wasn't working at one period of time, and I decided that it would be a great idea to write a book. And I finally write this one book that had been in my brain since I really read Graceling, maybe before that. So that's the history of how I ended up loving fantasy romance. So I have 2 books here I'm going to show you. So we have Throne of Glass. So obviously I read this when I was trying to get back into reading, because I need to read in order to write good. So that was the whole point of these. And this book has like a similar feeling to one of the books I wrote, and was probably inspired by this. So I really enjoyed Throne of Glass, but it did take me a couple books to get into. So if you have ever read Throne of Glass and the first book was kind of weird for you, read at least to the 3rd book. And then if you don't like it, don't read it anymore. But the 3rd book kind of like hit it for me, and that was it. I was obsessed, especially after the 4th book. The 4th book really did it. The 3rd book was good, and I really liked it. But the 4th book was perfect, to be honest. Anyway, so I moved into YA fantasy. Obviously I was an adult at that point, but the next book kind of stoked a little adult fantasy. My problem with adult fantasy is sometimes it's kind of slow at the beginning, and I'm honestly always been used to YA, and I read YA for a long time. And yes, I wanted to read more adult stuff, but it's hard to go from something that's super fast paced all the way through the book to something that's like really drawn out. And so I prefer adult books that are kind of in the middle space, which honestly should be new adult fantasy. But unfortunately, that's not a complete thing. Although I have seen a lot of agents listing for new adult, so maybe it's going to become a thing soon. I don't know. Anyway, so moving on. So after Throne of Glass, I was recommended to read Mistborn, and this became one of my all-time favorites. This book alone, not into the entire series, but this book alone here was just amazing. I love it so much. It has a heist in it. So I really enjoy heist, I found out when I read this. And it has a little bit of kind of like romance in it, but like I said before, Brandon Sanderson, I love him to death. He's great at magic systems, but he's not great at romance. And that probably comes a lot from his religion, which there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, if I want something spicy, I read Sarah J. Maas. If I want something that's total fantasy world, I feel like I was transported to another world, I read Brandon Sanderson. It really just depends on what I want. So I guess that is a very long and drawn out answer to the first question. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the second. Question number 2 is, how you read. has the format of your reading changed? So, yes, honestly. When I was a kid and teenager and early adult, well, not really early adult, but college and stuff, I read physical book for everything. Occasionally, I would like pick up like something like a Kindle book that I got for free and read on my phone. But I didn't even own a Kindle then. So yes, it has definitely changed because I honestly prefer reading, especially really big books, on Kindle. But I like to collect books, so it's a constant struggle. But yeah, I definitely really love Kindles, and I recommend it. If you like to read Kindle books, don't just read them on your phone or your iPad or your tablet. Read them on an ebook reader, so like a Kindle or a Nook or I think it's called Kobo or something like that. Anyways, any of those are going to be better for your eyes than reading off an iPad, because it uses different technology. It's way better for your mind, your brain, and your eyes. So that's what I would recommend. But occasionally, I do like the feel of a real book. Sometimes those really big books, they hurt my hand to hold, which is why I like the Kindle books. And whenever I have a physical book in my hand, I'm constantly playing with the pages because I have ADHD. And I think it slows my reading down. That's why I really like to read on Kindle. Whenever I was like probably almost 10 years ago, Jesus Christ, like 2015, I really got into audiobooks. And because I was working, I was doing data entry, so I could listen to something all day long on like in my ear, and I was getting through multiple books a week. It was great. But now I don't have I'm not able to really listen to audiobooks all day at work because I do have to be on the phone for at least a good portion of the day. Not all the day, but a good chunk of it. So I can't really do that. I can only listen to in between calls, or towards the end of the day when things are really slow and people aren't calling me or I'm calling them. So moving on to question number 3. How much you read? Do you read more or less than previously? When do you read? Has how often you read changed? So, yes, in a lot of ways. So, when I was a teenager, I was reading like a book a day. Like, no kidding. I didn't have a job. All I had was like softball practice, really, and school. So, during school, anytime I was done my work early or something, teachers be like, be quiet or read a book or something. I'd be reading books every chance I got. When I got home, I was reading the rest of the book that I hadn't quite finished. And it was just a constant turnover. I didn't have as much to do, so therefore I could read more. Now, I'm an adult with a full-time job and a husband to take care of as well. He always wants to spend time with me, so I kind of have to spend time with him as well. So yeah. So that's what I do. I like to read whenever I go to bed, like right before bed. Sometimes if I'm reading a really good book and I just can't put it down, I might start reading right after work. But I have other things that get in the way and things that gotta cook, you gotta clean. Yeah, adulthood is hard. So it just I feel like I never really have fully time to read, at least not like I used to when I was a teenager or a kid with nothing, no responsibilities that I have now. Question number 4 is, how has BookTube changed you as a reader? Honestly, BookTube, I really enjoy it, but it hasn't really done more to change me than more book recommendations and things like that. I like watching BookTube to find out of other books or books I hadn't really heard of that were coming out, or if something's being hyped, then I'm more likely to try to read it. Unfortunately, that's not always the winner, but I do try. Okay, so that was the last question. So now I'm going to tag a couple people in the description down below. And if you don't get tagged, I want you to do it anyways. Like, everyone who is watching this video, you are tagged by me. I will specifically tag a couple people down below. And I hope that you guys all do it. And just tag me, let me know you did the video so that I can check it out. Anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and say goodbye and have a good Mother's Day weekend, and I'll see you later. Bye!